that we could go a long way with simply testing. I think something else, though, that I would even push for more is that, you know, at the very beginning of this, I said, what is our goal? To deliver software that is error-free, that meets our customers' needs. You know what I'm saying? But I think another goal, a part of that goal should be, well, I do have it there, now and into the future, which means that this code needs to be flexible, able to accommodate change. If we're going to embrace this change, then we need to measure how well we're achieving this goal as a whole. And I think that we need to have metrics on our software that say, what's our bug rate? What's the rate, what's the time it takes us to fix those bugs? And I mean legitimately fix those bugs. What's the time that it takes us to accommodate changes from our user? You know, if they come down and they say, hey, we want X after we've already delivered a system, are we going to go back to our user and say, well, that's going to take us 6 months to accommodate that? Or can we say, you know, no, we can do that in 2 weeks or whatever, but we got to get some benchmarks out there measuring how well we're meeting our goal. If we're meeting our goal, then, or if we get us some benchmarks, then we can see when we're improving. You know what I'm saying? And we'll know if our unit testing is paying off, or if any of these design principles are paying off, or if we're just failing miserably at managing the additional complexity that is inherent to accommodating change. Does that make sense?
Of course, the how is the big question now.
The how to measure these things?
Yeah.
That's our group talks about that stuff every day.
Yeah.
Well,
you got it figured out?
Not yet.
I mean, there's
Keep up the good work.
I think there's
Work in progress.
There's things out there though for tracking bugs, you know, doing metrics on this stuff. But I mean, I think our metrics, metrics is a tricky thing too, because you want to make sure that what you measure drives the behavior that you're seeking, you know. And if you don't do it right, you're going to be pushing yourself off in the wrong direction. So, I mean, one thing that I would probably start with is getting some kind of repository, some database and I think Team Server Foundation will do this already for tracking bugs and work items and all these things. And you can start tracking the time to fix these bugs and what's the bug rate. And what would really be interesting is let's say we don't make any changes whatsoever. But we got a system over here that's in Team Foundation Server, one over here, and they're both tracking the bug rates and the fix times and stuff. And we try to break this work down, these units of work down, so that they're comparable in some way. Then the performance of this system is so much greater, the bug rate is so much lower than this one over here. Then that right there opens up, hey, let's analyze these two systems and see if we can see what's different about them and why one is so much more successful than the other. You know, to me that seems, yeah, it may seem like a daunting task, but my gosh, we got to do something. We got to do something to get a handle on these things. So I'm running a little under here. Any other questions?
I'm kind of surprised that you would say unit testing is one of the places that we need to work on, because it seems like you need to have an understanding of the design principles and design patterns to do testing well.
But see, that's just it. That's the reason that I did say unit testing. Because I believe that if you start doing unit testing, it's going to force you to write code that is more flexible, because it's going to have to be used in two different contexts. Okay? Initially, your unit testing may just stink, you know. But as you get better at it, it's going to drive you down a path that's going to force you to write code that will handle change. You know what I'm saying? It may force you to explore interfaces or design patterns or whatever. It'll force you to see, how can I decouple my system from my database so that I can exercise my code and test my logic without this dependency on some external system. Or, I mean, we have so many systems here that are interconnected. I mean, like, Mez is talking to live production apps, and it's talking to PlantView and everything else. Well, I want to be able to test my system apart from all those other things so that I know that what I've got here works. And then once I'm ready to do the integration testing, then I can plug those in. I don't want to have a development environment for all these other systems, you know. And by doing this testing and looking at a way that we can build software so that it is testable, will drive us down that path. And I think that's going to force our growth more than anything. Does that make sense?
So don't try to get good enough to start testing. Start testing, and
That'll make you get better. It'll force you to look at your code differently. It'll force you to consider things differently, because what becomes important to you, if testing your code becomes most important to you, then that's going to totally change the way that you write your code, because you're going to write your code so that it's easy to test. And then by that very nature, it's then going to become easy to change. Not only because tests are in place, but because your code's more loosely coupled. It's more flexible. Does that make sense? Am I just, y'all just saying, oh yeah, that sounds great, whatever.
You mentioned KPIs or baselines as far as software metrics go.
Right.
Bug rates.
Right.
So in order to do something like that, you would need someone to own or drive that process. Would you agree in our organization, or at least our department, being matrixized like it is, that's tougher to do versus a functional organization where you have a software development team and that's all they do? They don't work for anybody else. They're not on some manufacturing team, or they're not on some sales team. Do you agree that that's tougher to get going, because you don't have some champion or some executive that's saying, no, I know this is important and I want these KPIs and we're going to measure ourselves against it?
Well, again, I would say that your KPIs could be at the project level. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not arguing the value of KPIs at all. I fully agree. I'm just saying, do you agree that it would be harder to get that stuff pushed through an organization of our size?
Well, I think what you should try to do is you should try to do it incrementally. Let's say, for example, if you could get together with one other project, or even two of your own projects, and you measure your performance on those two, and you compare the two, and see if you got better over time as you try to implement things. You know what I'm saying? And once you've got valid data there to say, hey, look, we were able to correct such and such problem because we measured the problems. You know what I'm saying? Then it's going to be an easier sell. But I don't think you have to say, hey, all of Tyson's going to do this.
Right, so you're saying pilot and sell then?
Yeah, I think it's at a level that a project, whoever owns the project can declare, we're going to do this. You know what I'm saying?
most of this stuff, I think, that you presented here should be infectious, and it should spread. It shouldn't be policy driven from the top.
Yeah, and I think it will be infectious once you get to the level that you can execute it well. But
it's guidance and best practices which will spread.
But again, I really think that the problem is the complexity. And when you try to make something more flexible, it's going to become harder to do. It takes a lot more thought to build something that's going to be easy to change than just to hack together something that works. You know what I mean? And initially, it's probably going to be slower. But I believe, truly, I believe, that if you invest in these principles over the long term, you will become as fast as you are at hacking, doing it with these things, and you'll have much more maintainable software. Your software will cost you less over the lifetime of that software.
I would even add to it, you'll become faster.
You possibly. You may even become faster because you'll be able to incorporate changes faster in things. Your code.
Instead of trying to hack out stuff, you're designing it, but if I mean, the ones I've done before, like the model view presenter design pattern, it took me a couple months to get my head around that. But I can actually put together an application using that faster than trying to hack and slash it the way all that used to.
Right, right. But there is definitely a learning curve on this.
It is.
But again, I think that's where you need something in place where you have some kind of mentoring going on. You know, that's kind of why we started Devloop, was to try to share knowledge and start exercising this, you know, getting more people aware of such things. I mean, a lot of people aren't even aware that things even exist. They go, design what?
I wasn't until I met you.
Yeah, exactly. So we
talk
got to,
about
but I mean, ideally, I think if you had people that could influence others, you know, or bring others up, they may only be 1% smarter, you know, but at least they're a step ahead and they can help others, and we get this knowledge flowing, you know?